What would you do if the first hint your husband had another life came dressed as a baby photo? It was a Sunday morning, sunlight soft on the sheets, the kind of ordinary peace you never realize is temporary. My name's Julia, 36, senior accountant. I organize numbers for a living. Neat columns, clean sums. That's probably why I notice when something doesn't add up. Eric was still asleep beside me, breathing slow, unbothered. I was scrolling through social media, half distracted when I saw it. A post from his coworker, Vanessa in marketing. A baby in a pastel onesie. Caption, my whole heart. Cute until I noticed the comments. Eric's name. A heart emoji beside it. He woke as I stared, yawned, and took the phone gently from my hand. Relax, Jules, he said, laughing. It's Vanessa's kid. Remember the one I told you about? I smiled, pretended to remember, but then I looked again at the baby's face. That small, crooked smile, the same asymmetric grin Eric makes when he's trying not to laugh. It wasn't proof. Not yet. Just resemblance pretending to be coincidence. I didn't confront him. I did what I do best. Started an audit. My days ran like clockwork. 6 a.m. runs, 9 a.m. spreadsheets, 7 p.m. dinner. Weekends were for cleaning, meal prep, and the illusion of rest. Eric called it stability. I called it control. He said we balanced each other. His chaos, my calm. He's 38. Creative director at a boutique agency. Charming. Loud. Allergic to silence. He could fill a room with his laugh and still make me feel like the quietest thing in it. We'd been together 8 years. Married 5. No kids. His choice mostly. He used to say, parenthood's not for me. Too much noise, too little freedom. And I believed him because I wanted to look understanding, not desperate. I told people I admired his honesty, but sometimes honesty is just a better dressed form of avoidance. Our home reflected us. Minimalist, functional, emotionally neutral. Every drawer labeled, every document filed. The books arranged alphabetically, even the ones he never read. If love had receipts, ours would have been itemized. Sometimes I wondered if that's why we worked. Not because we were happy, but because we'd learned to operate like two systems syncing efficiently. Everything in balance, everything accounted for, until that photo. It's funny how discipline looks like trust until you discover its blindness. We met at a finance agency mixer, one of those tedious networking events with bad wine and forced enthusiasm. I was there to make connections. He was there to drink. He found me at the snack table, glass in hand, grinning like he'd already broken the rules. You look terrifyingly precise, he said. I raised an eyebrow. And you look like you just guessed your own tie color. He laughed. Loud, unfiltered, genuine. The kind of laugh that shakes the stiffness out of a room. He told me I was the kind of woman who'd never ruin a man. Just keep his life in perfect order. I took it as a compliment. The first years were good. We traveled when we could afford it, bought furniture we couldn't, and built a version of adulthood that felt almost cinematic. There were no fights, just discussions. We didn't explode. We negotiated. That's the accountant's version of romance. He handled the charm. I handled the structure. He said I made him feel grounded. I said he made me feel alive. It was a fair trade, or so I thought. Once, over dinner, he joked, "If I ever mess up, you'll catch me in an instant." I smiled. That's the benefit of accuracy. He grinned. Guess I'll just have to be careful then. I didn't realize he was testing my calculation. Back then, I thought trust was built like a balance sheet. Inputs and outputs, proof and reconciliation. I didn't understand that love isn't measured that way. Because fidelity isn't a formula. It's faith disguised as naivety. Suspicion didn't arrive dramatically. It slipped in through routine. At work, I was reviewing a client's expense report, reconciling totals, matching receipts to card numbers. It was muscle memory by now, but one number looked familiar. Eric's corporate card, a charge from months earlier, Little Bloom & Co., a baby boutique? I stared at it for a full minute before logic caught up. Maybe a gift, someone's shower, something normal. But my chest didn't believe what my brain was saying. That night, he was late. No text, no call. At midnight, my phone lit up. Client dinner ran long. Love you. I stared at the words until the irony felt sharp. Then I typed back a heart emoji. Small, harmless, perfectly normal, and turned off the light. The next morning, I went into the office early, logged back into the expense system, and printed the receipt. It wasn't the total that mattered. It was the address. Beneath the line item for Little Bloom & Co., there it was. Shipping to Vanessa R., Apartment 4C, Central Terrace. Proof didn't feel satisfying. It felt surgical, a clean cut, no anesthesia. I didn't confront him. I filed it away. That's what I do. I catalog, I balance. So I started a new spreadsheet. Not for work, for him, call logs, timestamps, mileage. The little discrepancies that, when placed side by side, started forming a pattern. I kept track of his lies the way he once tracked our mortgage payments. When he said he was at the gym, his odometer told a different story. When he said he had late meetings, his calendar told none at all. Every cell on that sheet was a quiet revelation, not of who he'd become, but of how long I'd stopped noticing. I wasn't looking for confrontation. I was looking for control, because that's what you do when love starts to unravel. You don't rip the thread. You measure it. A month later, the truth didn't arrive with confrontation. It came by post. An envelope addressed to Eric and Julia Mason. No return address, just familiar handwriting I didn't recognize. Inside was a simple thank you card, cream-colored floral border, the kind people buy in bulk for polite gratitude. But the message inside wasn't polite. It was devastating in its grace. Dear Eric, thank you for supporting Vanessa and the baby. She told me how much you've done. You're a good man. Her mother, Ruth. I read it twice. Slowly. The handwriting trembled. Careful cursive, old-fashioned. The kind you learn in school before you ever learn what lies look like. It wasn't just a confession. It was a stranger's blessing. That evening, I placed the card on the kitchen counter, between us like evidence waiting to be weighed. When he came home, loosened his tie, and kissed my cheek, I asked casually, "Who's Ruth?" He froze, half a second, maybe less, then smiled too quickly. "Vanessa's mom. She sends those to everyone at work. She's sweet like that." I nodded, matching his tone. "Of course." He relaxed, maybe even believed me, but something must have shifted in my voice because his eyes flicked toward the card again, cautious now. He kissed my forehead, said he was going to shower. The water turned on, a steady hum behind the door. I stood in the hallway, listening to it, realizing it wasn't cleansing anything, just masking it. It wasn't rage that came first. It was curiosity, the kind that makes you open wounds just to see how deep they go. I told myself I just wanted to confirm. Nothing more. A week after the letter, I drove to Central Terrace, Vanessa's building. The address from the baby boutique receipt had burned itself into my memory. I stopped by a florist on the way, bought a modest bouquet, white lilies, neutral, impersonal, a gesture without emotion. When I knocked, I rehearsed my line. From the office. The door opened. Vanessa stood there, hair pulled back, eyes tired in the way new mothers' eyes are, but still striking. And in her arms, the baby. Gray-green eyes, crooked smile, Eric's features rearranged into someone else's story. It was like looking at a family photo I wasn't invited into. I handed her the flowers. "These are from the team. We wanted to congratulate you." Her face softened. "That's so kind. Tell Eric I said thanks for everything." I smiled, perfectly balanced. "Of course." Walking back to my car, the world felt muted. No anger, no heartbreak, just the eerie quiet that comes after an explosion you didn't hear. Some truths tranquilize you before they kill you. That night, Eric cooked dinner. Pasta, wine, a playlist we hadn't updated in years. He talked about clients, new pitches, our upcoming anniversary. He performed his life, line by line, like a script he'd long memorized. I watched him, studied his hands, his posture, the practiced warmth in his voice. When he reached for me later, I didn't resist. When you already know, sex becomes anthropology, observing a species that doesn't realize it's extinct. He slept deeply afterward. I didn't. At dawn, I got out of bed, turned on my laptop, and logged into our joint account. By breakfast, I'd moved the majority of our savings into mine. He'd notice eventually. Accountants always leave a trail. But not yet. People call it self-care. I called it an audit. Revenge began quietly. Not in fury, but in preparation. It came through email. Not confrontation, not confession. Just an accident. Subject line, paternity paperwork and benefits. It was addressed to Eric, but copied to our shared inbox. A habit he'd forgotten existed. For a moment, I considered deleting it, pretending I hadn't seen, but curiosity by then had evolved into muscle memory. The attachment was a scanned HR form, formal and unassuming. I opened it. There it was. His name, his signature. Under father's details, Eric Mason. Under child, baby R. Clark. Vanessa's name, neatly typed below. Date stamped the same week as our anniversary trip to Lisbon, the one he'd canceled last minute for work emergencies. It's strange how betrayal always aligns itself with milestones. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared at the digital paper trail, the kind of evidence I used to collect for audits, not heartbreak. That night, I poured a glass of wine, sat at my desk, and made a call I'd been rehearsing in silence for weeks. Mark Mason, Eric's older brother, the family lawyer, the one who'd skipped our wedding, muttering something about not liking the groom's character. He picked up after 2 rings. I told him I wanted to talk about family. He hesitated, then said, "Sure. Dinner?" Over wine and candlelight, I told him pieces of the truth, rearranged, softened, carefully edited. He listened with a focus that felt unfamiliar. Mark had Eric's jawline, but none of his lies. When I laughed, he did too. When I paused, he didn't fill the silence. It was disarming. Dangerous. By the time we ended up in bed, it wasn't about passion. It was arithmetic. A correction. If Eric could divide himself between 2 lives, so could I. I didn't feel proud afterward, or guilty. Just balanced. For the first time in months, the ledger between us felt even. 2 weeks later, another letter arrived, this time handwritten, elegant. The return address made me pause. Arthur Mason. Eric's father. Inside. Julia, thank you for looking after Mark. He's been distant lately, but he spoke so kindly of you. Said you were the first person to make him laugh in years. You've done our family a kindness. No one in that family knew what had really happened, but the irony, was exquisite. I folded the letter carefully, slid it into my drawer beside the rest of my evidence. I'd inherited Eric's talent for double lives, only I was honest about mine. Eric never found out about Mark. Not directly. Some debts are best left uncollected. One evening he came home pale, his hands trembling around a half-empty glass of whiskey. "Vanessa's moving," he said quietly. "She's taking the baby. It's over." I nodded. Good. He looked at me then, waiting for something. Sympathy, anger, anything human. I gave him calm instead. The one language he still understood. A few weeks later, he packed his things. No fight, no tears, just fatigue. The kind that doesn't come from love ending, but from lies finally collapsing under their own weight. I kept the apartment, kept the order. Occasionally, I saw Vanessa from a distance, pushing the stroller, thinner now, her shoulders curved inwards. We never spoke. We didn't need to. We were both women who had outlived the same mistake. Then, one afternoon outside my office, an elderly woman stopped me. "You're Julia, right? I'm Ruth." Her smile was soft, almost maternal. "He's gone," she said gently. "I just wanted to thank you for being kind to my daughter." I nodded. "Of course." When she walked away, I sat in my car, shaking with laughter I couldn't explain. Part hysteria, part relief, part disbelief that the story had finally ended itself. He told me the child in the photo was his coworker's kid, but the baby had his smile. I knew he'd cheated on me and gotten her pregnant. I balanced the books in the end, just not the way forgiveness would have wanted.